Yo, what up? It's your boy Drew. Here's an interesting article I saw from yesterday on Yahoo News. It's a weird thing to be pushed pretty mainstream, in my opinion. It says, what is Havana syndrome? Inside the creepy directed energy attacks on U.S. diplomats. Over the past 5 years, an alarming number of American diplomats, troops, and intelligence officers have been suddenly stricken with a mysterious illness. The symptoms vary but range from headaches to ringing ears, as well as loss of hearing, memory, and balance. Some victims have suffered long-term brain damage. Even more disturbing, reports have trickled out that the CIA and the Pentagon don't believe this is a naturally occurring illness. It's a deliberate act of aggression. A study commissioned by the State Department said the most likely source is a pulse of radio frequency energy directed at U.S. targets. Since 2016, more than 130 American personnel have fallen ill with the syndrome, according to a new report from the New York Times. The first incident was in 2016 in Havana, Cuba. According to the State Department, at least 21 employees of the U.S. Embassy there reported the typical symptoms: headaches, tinnitus, and balance and memory problems. Some retired early because of the illness, which became known as Havana syndrome. What is causing the illness? Directed pulsed radio frequency energy was the culprit found by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in a report on the illness commissioned by the State Department. According to New York Times analysis, that language is crucial. By using words like pulse and directed, the report was saying the energy wasn't randomly dispersed by a cell phone or other device. It was being aimed at people. There's a mysterious direct energy weapon that's being used, Senator Susan Collins, who is on the Senate Intelligence Committee, told CNN after the briefing, and it is causing, in some cases, permanent traumatic brain injury. Side note here, so this is interesting to me because you're saying directed energy weapon, or a DEW, which is pretty much, until now, has been relegated to the conspiracy-minded people. And now this is a mainstream thing, Yahoo News, CNN, and everything like that. But let's keep going. Who is responsible? According to Politico, the Pentagon recently told top members of Congress that it suspects Russia is behind the suspected attacks. Russia has denied any responsibility. If confirmed, the directed energy attacks would join a long list of non-military assaults Russia has waged against the United States in recent years, including the SolarWinds cyber attack and interference in the 2016 presidential election. And a quick search of this brought me to this story from July 23, 2019, that talks about the same thing. And listen to this. It says advanced brain scans found perplexing differences in U.S. diplomats who say they developed concussion-like symptoms after working in Cuba, a finding that only heightens the mystery of what may have happened to them, a new study says. Extensive imaging tests on the American diplomats showed the workers had less white matter than a comparison group of healthy people and other structural differences, researchers said. While they had expected the cerebellum near the brainstem to be affected given the workers' reported symptoms, balance problems, sleep and thinking difficulties, headaches, and other complaints, they found unique patterns in tissue connecting brain regions. Rajini Verma, a University of Pennsylvania brain imaging specialist and the lead author, said the patterns were unlike anything she'd seen from brain injuries or diseases or injuries. It's pretty strange. It's a true medical mystery, Verma said. Here's a little clip from this article about it.
It all started back in December of 2016 when American diplomats reported hearing high-pitched noises and then fell ill. Now, the symptoms don't point to anything obvious. They're hearing loss, nausea, headaches and dizziness, even nosebleeds. So they asked their Canadian counterparts if they were experiencing similar issues. Turns out they were. A total of 27 Canadian diplomats and their family members were flown back to Canada to be tested. Of them, 8 were in need of additional medical attention. All have since returned to work or school. What's most perplexing is some of the diplomats say they did hear a strange noise outside their Havana homes, not the Canadian embassy. One described it as the sound tin makes when it's being waved. But not everyone who heard the noise got sick. Months later, 2 staffers reported more odd symptoms, what they call waves of physical pressure at their homes. And still, no one knows what is making people sick.
So to me, this is super interesting because it sounds like, Judy Woods, where did the towers go? That's something probably only people, deep into conspiracies have even looked into or heard of. I've showed this video before on my Instagram. If you want to watch the full thing, just go to Google and type 1985 CNN energy weapons. And they did a report on this back in 1985. So this isn't some new technology. But to me, it's interesting that it's going so mainstream, and I wonder where they're going with it. If you have any idea where this story may be going, just leave a comment.
Imagine the implications of a weapon with no visible trace. A weapon that could knock out tanks, ships, and planes as fast as the speed of light. The same technology with modifications could disorient and even tranquilize military personnel, rendering them virtually helpless in the battle zone. These are the new weapons of war we will examine in this series. Specs for the Air Force for over 10 years, and he, like a small but growing number of weapons experts, feels that radio frequency, or RF weapons, could be the wild card in the ongoing arms race.
You could have tremendous amounts of radiative power. And what you did with that power then is a matter of engineering design and what your goal is.
Robert Bass, a physicist and PhD in mathematics, is working on U.S. weapons research. He says that the Soviets seem to be ahead in a number of areas, and especially in RF weapons.
We are behind the Soviet Union in directed energy weapons based on 60 gigahertz microwave beams.
Dr. Bass and others feel the most likely form of Soviet RF weaponry would be high-powered microwaves, similar to a focused, ultra-high-intensity radar beam. It would literally cook humans and knock out computers and electronic surveillance and communications gear. An operational RF weapon, relatively cheap and reusable, could devastate sophisticated and expensive war machinery. The $20 million F-16 fighter, for example, is totally controlled through electronic sensors and computers. With no manual flight controls, the plane would literally fall out of the sky after being hit with a high-intensity pulse.
And they show clips from this 1960s footage where they're able to stop a charging bull just with directed radio frequency.
A scientific milestone in this area came in the 1960s when Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside? Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
But in the Soviet Union, a radio frequency, or RF device, has been used for over 30 years to manipulate the moods of mental patients. It's called a LIDA machine. Similar machines prove that humans are susceptible to remote alterations of mood and awareness.
Certain kinds of weak electromagnetic signals work exactly like drugs. And so the promise is that anything you can do with drugs, you could do with the right electromagnetic signals. Apparently, there are specific sites involved, specific functions involved. It's a matter of matching up, just like it is with a pill or a drug, to cause and effect. You could have a cause and effect relationship between a magnetic field and a biological function.
Later, I asked Van Bice what a weapon using this technology could do.
Induce basically what would be considered hallucinations in people, direct them to do things against their so-called better judgment.
How easy would it be to assemble a weapon from existing off-the-shelf parts?
In 3 weeks, I could put together a weapon that would take care of a whole town.
I don't know. To me, it's pretty interesting just to see it hit so mainstream, and it just makes me wonder where they're going with it more than what's actually happening. But I'd love to hear your comments about it. I'll leave all those links in the description of the video. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. I appreciate your time, and peace out.